Good morning. The House Criminal Justice Committee will come to order. Would the clerk please take the attendance?
Chair Hope.
Here.
Representatives Andrews. Carter.
Present.
Green. Young. Here. Arbit. Devendorf. Cerniglu. Filler.
Yes.
Mueller. Lazat.
Present.
Harris.
Here.
Gold.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 7 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you.
Morning, Chair. Streamlined into your veins. They roll in.
The House Criminal Justice Committee will come back to order. Representative Young moves to adopt the minutes from the January 31st meeting. Without objection, the meetings are adopted. Now we have a presentation from my alma mater and from Tracy Brame and Marla Mitchell-Sisson, who was my professor. We won't say when. Who are with the Cooley Innocence Project, and we look forward to their presentation. Please join us at the table.
Of counsel to the Cooley Innocence Project here in Lansing, and I am the former director.
Can you turn your mic on, please?
And to my right is Professor Tracy Brame, who is the current director of the Innocence Project. So Kara brought it up, so I don't know when I was her professor, but I've been at Cooley for a really long time. Over about 25 years, and as we talk, you'll learn a little bit more about our program and some of the policy priorities that our office is interested in looking into, supporting, and educating on this term and beyond. So, just to give you a little background of our office, it totally relates to the legislature because our office was established shortly after Michigan passed post-conviction DNA testing law in 2001. And since that time, we've focused primarily on post-conviction DNA testing cases, which has led to the exoneration of 8 men, and we have supported the exoneration of 3 additional individuals. So we are a member of a national organization called the Innocence Network, and every state has an Innocence Project. Many have more than one, and we also work very closely with the Michigan Innocence Clinic and the Innocence Project in New York, which we consider our mothership, the founding Innocence organization. To date, our office has screened over 6,000 cases. We have pursued DNA testing in roughly 40 cases, and as I mentioned, we've exonerated 8 men. So I think we have been very, it won't feel like it in our office, but we've been very efficient, and I think we've served the courts well in terms of that. So I wanted to put the list of our clients up here and just highlight, just have you look quickly. We can't talk about each individual person, but I do want to recognize Kenneth Nixon, who is an exoneree, and apparently he's now a lobbyist, so he's making good use of his freedom. And we're very grateful for that, in his support and his insights. And I joked with him when he came in, I said, actually, you can just take over now, because I hope that as we proceed into this legislative season, that you will hear from clients across the state of Michigan who have been harmed by some of the issues that I'm going to be talking about today. And many of them do contribute, and I wanted to put this list down, again, because we don't have time to talk about each person and each of their stories, and they can tell that story much better. But I wanted to highlight some of the problems that arose in their cases and how we believe legislative reform might most importantly prevent those problems, and in some cases remedy or assist exonerees as they re-enter the society. So thank you. I already mentioned this, but you know, we want to be a resource. We're not here to tell legislators what they should do. We are here to provide information, and working with the national organization is really beneficial, not only to our office, but to all of you. So I just want to, if I don't say it at the end, I want to remind everyone that I'm a resource for you, and I have my contact information. And if you would like more information about many of the issues that I'm going to speed date through today, if I don't know the answers, I can get information about what's happening in other jurisdictions, other states. And I will be mentioning a few of those, but I just want you to know that you know, we're a resource. The other thing that I really pride the Cooley Innocence Project in particular on, and I feel that the program is in really good hands with Tracy Brame, is we have a good reputation throughout the state in our relationships with stakeholders. We have good relationships with prosecutors' offices. We have a good relationship with the Michigan State Police Crime Lab. We have prided ourselves in being good advocates for our clients, but also developing relationships. And I think to highlight a point about innocence that sometimes gets overlooked, which is we all would agree that having an innocent person spend one day in prison is not acceptable in our communities. So as I've done this work for the past 20 years, we've moved more and more towards collaborating with governmental agencies. As many of you are probably aware, the Attorney General's office has a conviction integrity unit. Wayne County has a conviction integrity unit. Washtenaw and Oakland County have conviction integrity units. And that has been literally a game changer in doing this work because it's not adversarial, it's about seeking the truth, and the court system isn't always equipped to handle these types of cases in a way that we would like to see. So that's changed, again, what we've done, the work that we've done. We used to file cases under 77016, the post-conviction DNA testing law. I'm very proud to say that in most of those cases, the prosecutor agreed to testing or a court-ordered testing. In a few cases, we were denied testing, and we, in my opinion, got pretty good case law interpreting this statute. But the statute has been around since 2001, and one of the things that we didn't know back in 2001, well, one, I didn't know anything about DNA. I was a relatively experienced lawyer, but I went to law school, so I didn't have to do math or science. So I was kind of in a predicament. But we had, I had to learn science. I had to learn what a DNA test looked like and to look at the supporting data. And again, to be able to talk intelligently to the Michigan State Police Crime Lab and ask good questions. And so my office has done that. We consider ourselves the leading expert in the state on post-conviction DNA testing. But what has happened is the science has exploded over the years. And I was not directly involved in 2001 when the law passed, but I was involved shortly thereafter. And there was a mentality that this law would be temporary. In fact, there was a sunset provision. But what we didn't know, none of us knew at the time, was that the science was going to continue to evolve and change. So one of our priorities is to expand the DNA testing law, to make some tweaks to it, to make it more responsive to what our current needs are. So just quickly, the two areas that I think are critically important to be looked at are DNA testing in guilty plea cases and to allow testing without, I don't want to say without regard to prior testing, but with a different regard for prior testing. So again, in 2001 and since then, the statute has not allowed for post-conviction DNA testing in guilty plea cases. And that was the climate throughout the country. That has completely flipped. There are essentially 3 states that do not allow post-conviction DNA testing in a guilty plea case. And Kentucky is a bit of a hybrid. It allows it after an Alford plea. But the key point is that we know now, after 20 to 25 years, 30 years essentially, of DNA testing, that in the criminal justice system, 1, most cases are resolved through a guilty plea, and 2, individuals plead guilty for a variety of reasons. So as we'll maybe talk about later, pleading guilty is associated with some other issues that commonly come up in wrongful conviction cases, such as a false confession. So if you've falsely confessed or someone claims you've confessed and you have not, it's very difficult to go forward through the trial process. So one of the things that our office would really like to see change is that guilty pleas would be included. Now, I know that because 95% of all criminal cases are resolved by guilty pleas, that there might be a concern, much like there was in 2001, frankly, about what is this going to mean as a practical matter for the legal system? And I can assure you that it's not going to be a problem, because my office has been screening guilty pleas since 2019. We actually obtained federal grant funding for that purpose. And we have only requested DNA testing. Of course, we couldn't do it through the court system, but we worked with prosecutor's office in a couple of cases. The Michigan Innocence Clinic, that does not focus on DNA cases, but files traditional post-conviction motions based on all types of new evidence, has only represented 2 clients in pursuing legal claims. So again, kind of hearkening back to the day, sorry, Kara, you were way after that. You know, we had about 6,000 letters waiting for us after it was announced that our doors were opening. So since then, we've screened 6,000 cases. I mean, sorry, not 6,000 letters, 600 letters. We didn't even have file cabinets or anything organized yet, but certainly the word got out. So we feel that we've already, within our office, we've already anticipated that through the development of conviction integrity units and cooperation with law enforcement and prosecutor's office, we've already been screening these cases. And so based on our screening, we can tell you that we're not talking about an additional burden under the statute. Secondly, the statute, and I'm not going to get into the details because I don't really have time today, but the statute is, I'll just say it's a bit dense when it talks about when you can get testing. And we would like to see that simplified to a certain extent because, again, the statute was good when it was written, but what we didn't anticipate, we now know now. And one of the things is, believe it or not, even in cases as late as, let's say, maybe 2014, some individuals are not getting pretrial DNA testing. So what we would like to see is that any material biological evidence that wasn't previously tested or in which current DNA technology could render more information about that could lead to exculpatory evidence, we would want that evidence to be tested. Again, it will not be a burden because we are already asking for testing in those types of cases through our cooperative relationships with prosecutors' offices and conviction integrity units. So we really think that, in fact, we haven't filed a petition probably in a couple years. But what we want to do is make sure that Michigan is prepared for the future as it relates to the criminal justice system and DNA. I figured out where the arrow was. I'm so smart. Secondly, we would really, were thrilled when Michigan passed a compensation package for those who have been wrongfully convicted. But since that law has been on the books, we found some significant challenges in its implementation. And just as a reminder, compensation really has two goals, one of which we can't achieve, which is to make that person whole. No amount of money will do that for our clients. But Michigan, like many states, have made an effort to provide financial support for exonerees. I'm extremely proud of Michigan when they passed this law, when it included services, meaning assistance with housing, with counseling, with getting reacclimated to the community. And I have learned a lot and been able to develop really good relationships with the Michigan Department of Corrections on this reentry issue, because as you can all imagine, the needs of an exoneree are different than someone who's paroled. And the Michigan Department of Corrections has come a long way in working with exonerees and trying to meet their needs. That said, what we found is that the law has not been quick, which exonerees need compensation immediately. Gilbert Poole was in prison for a crime he did not commit for 32 years. He was not from Michigan when he was convicted. He got out of prison in Michigan with no family in any state. And he had to reacclimate himself to society. And so waiting for that compensation to come through, I mean, there's literally, you all know that when you are released from prison, no matter who you are, they open the gates and you walk out. So I'm very proud of the statute that was implemented, but some changes are needed to make it more efficient and better. My office, the Michigan Innocence Clinic, the national organization has been working diligently with the Michigan Attorney General's office on this issue. And we feel that we, in collaboration, that we have some good suggestions for improving the Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act. So we hope that that will be a priority in the upcoming months. Now on to some new initiatives. I will go back to maybe looking at some laws on the book, but many of you are probably aware that the governor established a task force, I believe it was about 2 years ago, and on forensic science. The task force issued its very weighty report in December, and I'm happy to provide, there's a link in the PowerPoint, but I'm happy to provide that link to you. It's also on the Michigan State Police website. And again, we don't have time this morning to talk about all of their recommendations, but I want to highlight two things that I think are really important. One, we definitely need a forensic science commission in our state. We only have to think about how many counties we have, how many jurisdictions we have under those counties, how many law enforcement agencies, how many medical examiners' offices. And again, one of the things that we find generally is that not every office has to be held has the same internal operating procedures, but every office should be held to certain minimum standards, and there should be some uniformity throughout the state. And a commission one of their primary roles would be to do that work, to look at the entire state of Michigan, who is bringing forensic science services to our state, and how can we support those individuals, and how can we improve those individuals, and perhaps most importantly, how can we, the state of Michigan, look to the future so that we are leaders in forensic science. I know that you all know, because you all keep up with the news, that bad science, science that's not real, right, has contributed significantly, not only in Michigan, but across the country, to wrongful convictions. One of the things that I like to say to people is, when you go into court on a civil case, you will never see junk science, unreliable science. And we are fighting over money in those cases. In criminal cases, Ken Nixon's liberty was at stake, and unreliable forensics were used. In Gilbert Poole's case, bite mark evidence was a key piece of the evidence that was used to convict him. Not only was this evidence allowed to be introduced, but the same odontologists testified in multiple cases throughout the state, leading to at least 2, 3, or possibly 4 other wrongful convictions. But if you go back to the beginning, the methodologies that he was using, the so-called expert, and his testimony were not scientifically valid. They never have been, and arguably they never will be. And I just want to be clear here. I'm not talking about the use of odontology in an appropriate way. For example, identifying a deceased person by clear medical records. But if you're a science geek, which I had to turn into one, there's now some really great studies that have been done by the FBI, by the National Institute of Science. Again, I'm happy to provide those reports. And they talk about many of the, I call them modalities, that are used in the criminal justice system that fail to have scientific support. And if we look at the list of just my 8 clients, right, those types of problems are coming up in each and every case. In working on the forensic science issues, on working on an issue that I'm going to talk about in a moment, jailhouse informant issues, we've looked at our own cases, meaning not just the cases in my office, but the cases throughout Michigan. And I highly recommend, if you want more information, again, to go to the National Exoneration Registry, where you can look and read more about particular cases, and you can also learn more about the causes and how it impacts the criminal justice system, not only here in Michigan, but throughout the country. Yes.
I'm gonna put you on pause right there just to see if any committee members have any questions, because we're gonna have to wrap it up pretty soon. Anybody? No questions? Rep. Young?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We call her Madam Chair. I know you call her something else, but it was like, that's so cute. But I am interested in knowing a little bit more about the work that you all are doing with people like my colleague here, Ken Nixon, and the organization of Exonerees. I had an opportunity to meet Gilbert Poole when he first got out, and we did some work, and we discovered a bunch of areas where there are gaps in providing these resources that were needed. I do believe that he couldn't even find a way to open up a bank account, something that's simple. None of us, we just take for granted. You show up at the bank, you have your ID, and you open a bank account. But it wasn't just that simple for him. And so we had to pull some strings, but we got him that bank account open, right? We did that. But I'm interested in knowing exactly what your relationship is with the organization of Exonerees. And then I'm also looking forward to working with you all a little bit further on some of the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that. And I'll just say one brief thing about that. My office is not designed to help with reentry, right? We're a law office. We learned a lot more about reentry when Gilbert Poole was exonerated. Exonerees, whether they choose it or not, are teachers. We learn so much from them. So while we meaning myself, Tracy Brame, Tracy Brame, our director now, has a background in reentry and has done a lot of work. She ran an expungement clinic in Grand Rapids. So we have experience, but we're not experts, and it's not our day-to-day work. But we definitely are open to supporting the Exoneree organization and networking with organizations to help inform folks so that they can do their work better.
Thank you. We have, if you don't mind, we'll just take questions now and then.
Yes, of course.
And then wrap it up. A lot of great information. This is the other side of criminal justice.
Well, I
Kinda
really
like-
appreciate stopping now because we're really getting into the controversial topics.
Oh,
No,
okay,
no,
okay.
they're in my PowerPoint. And again, I'll just briefly mention that we'd like to see some legislation related to jailhouse informants, police transparency, and prisoners' opportunities to obtain public records in their own cases. So those are highlighted in the PowerPoint. And again, I'm happy to talk with any of you. Just reach out to me, and I will make time to assist you in any way that I can. So I'm happy to answer any other questions.
And the entire PowerPoint is on the committee's website if you'd like to take a look. We'll take a question from Rep. Carter, and then Rep. Filler, and then we will turn it over to the sheriff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, you talked about that we need minimal standards for all 83 counties. How much do they vary? Or have you found out? I mean, I know some may not even have, they may have contracted services. So how do we get to that point where there's an expectation across the board?
Well, that's one of the challenges, right? That it's so varied, and the amount of resources that a particular county has, or the amount of resources that a police department has, right? And so I can't answer the question because, to be frank, we don't exactly know. What we know is that sometimes problems occur because of the lack of uniformity. And again, I want to be clear here that we have to meet organizations and those who serve the state where they are. We can't expect a small police department to have a crime lab and to do what the Michigan State Police does. But I think that a commission would go a really long way a commission is not going to be an organization, if you want to call it that, that's going to work for a year and then be done. A commission in forensic science can inventory and make proposals, whether they're legislative proposals or whether it's educational seminars. So I think we have a lot of work to do in that area.
Yeah, and just to speak on that topic, I think Professor Mitchell-Sisson is absolutely right. A commission would go a long way in that work, sort of akin to the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, right? So we had the same problem in indigent defense where we had 83 counties, varying resources, varying outcomes, and the commission has come in to really kind of raise the standard and kind of put some resources and expertise behind helping localities kind of meet those standards. And so it would be wonderful to see something similar in the forensic sciences.
Well, I think an easy fix, I'll have a conversation with the state police for those counties that don't have the resources to lean on them and see what we can do to help them as well. So it creates a standard and an expectation.
Exactly.
And Professor Brame has extensive experience with the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, so we are also a resource in that regard.
Rep. Filler?
Thank you so much for your work, and thanks for coming in. The Forensic Science Commission, I've heard the idea before. I guess my worries were always political appointees sort of overseeing science labs. We have two main labs, right? We have Oakland County and MSP, and there are MSP labs all over the state. I don't know how many. But they're all nationally accredited. I believe I did the tour last year of Oakland County. It's an unbelievable process with chain of custody and everything that goes into it. So I'm not sure what the goodness of adding an additional step of oversight on folks who already have oversight. But I guess that's my question, but also a comment.
Well, first of all, I would say that 2 members of the Michigan State Police were on the task force, and the task force did recommend a commission. And I'll speak from my vantage point. I think that the Michigan State Police, in particular, can take a leadership role here. The commission, the goal or the idea of the commission certainly is to make sure that good science is brought to the state, and we know that some bad science has been brought to the state and used in the criminal justice system. But also, Michigan should be a leader, right? And Michigan State Police has proven itself as a leader in forensic science. And so as far as the composition of the commission, I could not agree with you more. The task force has made a recommendation, and I actually disagree with the composition a bit more from a personal vantage point, in that I think it should be a wide cross-section of stakeholders, okay? People who will be affected by this, as well as research scientists, who can, again, so that there can be a synergy of information and sharing. And when we say oversight, part of that will be determined by the commission, right? There are things in place at the Michigan State Police Crime Lab, for example, to handle directly issues of negligence or misconduct. However, there are lots of other agencies that don't have those types of resources in place. So really what we're talking about here, the bottom line is, what does the public deserve? What do the citizens of Michigan deserve? And one of the challenges, I think, in developing a forensic science commission through a legislative initiative is we really want to get the experts on the commission and have them lead the policy discussion and changes in our state. And that would be the goal. I would recommend looking at the Texas Commission that's been very successful. But again, we want to make sure that we're also looking back at Michigan and deciding what's best for Michigan and not photocopying what other states are doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony today. I know you could probably have taken the whole hour. There's a lot of good stuff.
Or the whole day.
Or the whole day.
I have time.
Maybe we'll have you back sometime. I appreciate you presenting, and once you're all set there, we'll have the sheriffs come up.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Good morning, Chairwoman Hope, committee members. I am Matt Saxton. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Sheriff's Association, and we're here to present today about what the Michigan Sheriff's Association is and what we do for the 83 elected sheriffs. First off, I'm the Executive Director with the Michigan Sheriff's Association, retired sheriff of Calhoun County. I spent my last 8 years at Calhoun County as the elected sheriff of Calhoun, and then I retired after 27 years there to take this position as the Director of Michigan Sheriff's Association. And to my right, I'll let Dan and Sheriff Rigglesworth each introduce.
Through the chair, good morning, committee members. My name is Dan Faunus. By way of background, I've been a police officer for over 40 years. I did my first 25 years in the city of Westland. I worked up through every rank there and ultimately retired as its chief of police. I retired so I could become the undersheriff in Wayne County, a position that I held for 15 years under 3 successive sheriffs. And then eventually, MSA reached out to me. I was an active member in that association. They asked me if I would consider coming on board as the deputy director. I very willingly took that position, and I've been there for a little bit over a year.
And I'm Scott Rigglesworth, Ingham County Sheriff. This is my 30th year in law enforcement. Did my first 23 years at EOPD. Was fortunate enough to be elected sheriff and took office 1/1 of 17, and I'm in my 7th year being sheriff. I think I'm going to kick off, and some of you probably figure that I'm going to talk about traditional law enforcement, but what I think I'm going to do today is talk and focus on what a sheriff does with respect to the jail. I know there's a couple people on this committee that are going to know almost all of this stuff, but I'm going to guess that some of you will know some of it, and you may learn a thing or two today about all the stuff that happens within our 4 walls. So I'm going to talk about that briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Dan and Matt. So what does a sheriff do with respect to the jail? We book inmates. We decipher court commitments. And that may sound easy, but you think doctors write bad? It can be very difficult to decipher what a judge wants done specifically to somebody that comes to the jail. We classify inmates, and when we do that, we have to factor in keep separates, charges, past discipline, housing locations, protective custody, maximum security inmates, and direct observation inmates. Our differing populations, we house sentenced and pretrial detainees. We house MDOC, or the Department of Corrections detainers. So please understand that the prison system has nowhere to house people that violate parole. They typically are housed in the county jail, have their hearing, and then either do their time in the county or go back to prison. We house for the U.S. Marshal System or the federal government. On probation for both district and circuit court. Warrants pre-arraignment, child support, fresh arrests, interim bond, i.e. the typical drunk driver, people awaiting forensic mental health competency exams, and violent juveniles that youth homes can't handle. Stays in jail pretrial. So 1/1 of 2023, this year, I ran some statistics, and on that date, the Ingham County Sheriff's Office had the jail had 348 arraigned population, meaning they were in the custody of the sheriff. Of those 348 people, 33 were pretrial, meaning they were on bond or either had no bond and couldn't post that bond to get out. And please keep in mind, bonds get set by the judicial branch of government. Sheriffs have no say on what that bond is going to be. On that day, we had 33 people in jail pretrial that had been there north of a year. 21 north of a year, 11 north of 2 years, and 1 north of 3 years. Again, please remember, sheriffs have no say in who stays in jail or what that bond is. Now, most sheriffs would say inmate populations are lower, some significantly lower compared to years past. I had 373 inmates in the jail this morning. We used to be a 660-bed facility about 15 years ago. But I can't imagine sheriff in Michigan saying that their workload is down. Most that remain in jail are either significant public safety risks or have mental health and or substance use disorder, many co-occurring. Big lifts for us to manage on a daily basis. Please remember, county jails remain the de facto largest mental health facilities in America. On that 1/1/23 date, of the 373 people we had in jail, 79% were pretrial. 21% had been sentenced. We used to hover around 50-50. So the wheels of justice are spinning very slowly. We transport inmates to court, medical, prison, writs. We facilitate 14-day health appraisal of any new arrivals. We facilitate mental health evaluations. We do suicide precautions. We have a robust partnership with our community mental health. We administer north of 1,000 prescription dispenses a day. We dispense prescriptions twice a day, every day, 365 days a year. And those within our four walls have a lot of prescriptions, and that can be complicated. We do medically assisted treatment for those with substance use disorders. We facilitate recreation. Inside the sheriff's office, we have a robust programming partnership. We do GED classes, financial literacy, parenting, conflict resolution, moral recognition therapy, AA, NA, seeking safety, trauma-centered yoga. Yes, we do yoga inside the Ingham County Sheriff's Office. Restorative justice, anger management, seeking safety, hustle, and our new program is called A-RISE, which means a rebuilding of individuals with skilled trades and education. So I've said it once and I'll say it till the last day I'm sheriff. It's called corrections, not incarcerations. The Ingham County Sheriff's Office and most sheriff's offices within the state will give the people within our four walls all the opportunities we can to make sure, or at least give them the possibility to correct those behaviors to increase the likelihood when they get out, they stay out and lead productive lives. We'll serve 1,200 meals today. Those meals are all cooked fresh within our four walls. We have to try to keep 18 judges in Ingham County happy, on time, their dockets, and virtual court, whether you know it or not, became a big thing through COVID. Well, virtual court is great for the people on the outside. Virtual court is super complicated for our corrections deputies to keep dockets on time, throw in the occasional overtime, throw in the occasional technical issue. To say it's complicated every single day is an understatement. Professional visits, attorneys, clergy, probation, parole. We process work release. We hire, train, and fire inside inmate workers. We calculate release dates with sheriff's good time and earned early release for working inside our facility. We process bonds. We process electronic monitoring and tether. We do inmate administrative disciplinary hearings. We facilitate commissary. We have a jail library, and we release inmates. Not to mention court security, transports, emergency management, volunteer services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I haven't even really touched on the traditional law enforcement. Ingham County was fortunate enough to pass a Justice Complex millage in August of 2018 to build a new, modern, safer, and better equipped facility for all the aforementioned duties. I recently gave Chair Hope and her husband a tour of the facility, and my hope, no pun intended, that she was impressed. After the tour, I spoke with Chair Hope and offered getting a small group of this committee to be able to tour our facility. So some on this committee, I know that Open Meetings Act, you couldn't have a quorum, but we could certainly get people that wanted to see a new, modern facility. It's light years ahead of some of these old facilities that sheriffs are having to operate out of, and some of those sheriffs really have no chance to get a facility, unfortunately. Law enforcement and sheriff's offices specifically are proud organizations, constantly trying to improve how we serve our communities. We will continue to try and be better today than we were yesterday, always willing to face danger downrange and head on, knowing and accepting the consequences that may follow. And I'll finish with this. I hate the phrase, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Not in my book. We should be sprinting every day in this profession, giving it all we got every day, no days off. Serving, protecting, learning, training, listening, and improving, just to name a few. Now, as we get older, I'm in my 30th year, our sprint may not be quite as fast as it once was, but we should be sprinting nonetheless. After all, it's what our community expects of us, and it should be what our 83 sheriffs expect of their staff. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Sheriff Wigglesworth. And we invited Sheriff Wigglesworth here today because when many of you think of sheriff's office, you think of traditional law enforcement and not all those duties that the 83 sheriff's staff members have to perform on a daily basis just within the four walls of the jail. So a little bit about the Michigan Sheriff's Association. We were established back in 1877. We're the oldest law enforcement organization in the state of Michigan, and we represent the 83 sheriffs of the 83 elected sheriffs of Michigan. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We are not funded by any state dollars whatsoever. And we also have 21,000 citizen members of the Michigan Sheriff's Association that help us provide many of the programs that we are able to provide for the 83 elected sheriffs and the 10 million citizens of the state of Michigan. The roles and the goals of the Michigan Sheriff's Association are to preserve and enhance the role of the sheriff as the chief law enforcement officer of the county they serve, to institute training and education programs, support effective law enforcement efforts geared towards traffic safety, provide a means of support for well-being of victims of crime, assist in addressing and resolving its members' concerns regarding correctional facilities, and maintaining a leadership role in the enhancement of legislation that serves to support the Michigan sheriffs and provides public safety for the citizens of Michigan. The Sheriff's Office of Michigan are staffed by over 10,000 employees with roughly 4,439 licensed local corrections officers, with that serving the 78 jails in the state of Michigan. There are 5 sheriff's offices that do not have a jail, and they house local inmates at neighboring counties. And there are just shy of 4,500 licensed law enforcement professionals under MCOL's certification at the 83 sheriff's offices, with over 10,000 employees. Dan.
So I assume you guys are following along with the PowerPoint presentation we give you. And I want to draw your attention to the header that I put on the next slide, professionalism through training. The Michigan Sheriff's Association believes that it has a mandate to ensure that the people that are under its umbrella are provided the appropriate training to make sure that they're as professional as possible in the roles that they need to perform. I've listed a number of things or a number of areas that we provide training in. We run the new Sheriff's Leadership Institute. Sheriffs are elected every 4 years. As new individuals take office, we think it's incumbent upon us to at least tell them, you've gotten this position that you were elected, that you sought, and now it's important that you know what you have to do on day one. As we've talked about, the world of the sheriff's world is very interesting from the standpoint of no matter how much you understood traditional law enforcement, the question becomes, do you also understand the corrections side? And sheriffs are responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of every inmate that's in their custody. And we need to make sure that they understand that mandate and the duties that they need to perform to be able to meet that mandate. We have the new undersheriff school. We have the new jail administrator school. We have a victims advocate school. We have the Michigan Sheriff's Special Investigative Operations Network, what we call Mission School. We have a yearly summer professional development conference. We have a yearly fall professional development conference. And we also engage in marine safety training. And if you'll indulge me, I'm not going to read every class that's on this slide, but I can't stress the importance of the number of dimensions that are associated with the sheriff or the undersheriff and the role that they play in their respective organizations. Not only do they have to become the chief executive officer of a, in some cases, a multi-million-dollar company. They have to manage a range of staffs from very small sheriff's offices in the state to very large sheriff's offices in the state. For example, I came from Wayne County, and at one point in history, we had 1,300 employees, not counting our civilian staff. We had nearly 2,700 inmates. Today, they manage a tether population of nearly 1,600 individuals that are out there for varying offenses. The world of becoming the sheriff just doesn't take place because you raise your hand and you take your oath. There's a number of attendant issues that you need to be brought up to speed on. And if you'll notice on this slide, we've listed a myriad of the trainings that we want to expose the sheriffs to. Going to the next slide, the new undersheriffs. Undersheriffs are the number 2 person at any organization. They're the the right-hand person for the sheriff, primarily responsible for the operational side of implementing everything that needs to be done at a sheriff's office. Again, there's a multitude of trainings that we want to expose these individuals to. Not only from dealing with inmate care, for example, but on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. We've got employee well-being that we need to worry about. We need to worry about the regular laws of arrest. We need to worry about the laws of incarceration. We also need to worry about the labor laws that are associated with managing the staffs that we do lead. Going to the last rule, the jail administrator, I can't tell you how important this position is. From my own personal life perspective, with 25 years in law enforcement, leading a large law enforcement agency, I thought I knew quite a bit about the state of affairs that existed. And when I came to Wayne County and discovered the magnitude of the jail that was there, the different levels of inmates that were involved in it, the population management, the differing threat levels that existed inside the facility, providing for that health, safety, and welfare, it was such an eye-opener for me. And jail administrators are tasked with assuming all of those duties to take care of those inmates and the operations of the sheriff's office.
The next training program and program we offer throughout the state is the victim advocate training. We have 57 victim advocate groups across the state of Michigan that are made up of solely volunteers within those counties, 3 of which are based out of city PDs, one here in Lansing PD, the other in Holland, and the other in Grand Rapids. The remaining victim advocate units are ran through sheriff's offices throughout the state. We have over 600 volunteers that serve on those units, and they are able to provide assistance to surviving victims of incidents that where that case may not make it go to the prosecutor's office, such as suicides, car accidents, fatal fires, several areas where surviving victims don't have that support and the law enforcement doesn't have the ability to have law enforcement staff do that. So we started the Victim Advocates Program. We just did, and that is funded under a grant through DHHS, and we just had a new 20-hour new victim advocate training up in Marquette that ran this past weekend.
The next thing we'd like to expose you to is what we call mission. And the mission is something that I can't tell you how proud I am of it. I think it's one of the greatest services the Michigan Sheriff's Office, Michigan Sheriff's Association provides to its 83 sheriffs. The simple way to explain this is, mission is a mutual aid internal affairs section. If a sheriff's office has an administrative or a criminal complaint against one of its staff members, that sheriff's office either may not have the personnel to deal with it, depending on the rank of the person that was involved. It might be a conflict of interest that exists inside their agency, and they seek outside help. An entity that wants our assistance will call the Michigan Sheriff's Association. We'll identify 2 trained investigators from a non-contiguous county. So you have a set of eyes that have no relationships with anyone. They're going to kind of come in and they'll do an administrative investigation to see if any rules, policies, procedures, directives, et cetera, were violated. They'll also take a look and see if there was any criminal element to what had transpired. And if that was the case, they'll actually prepare a warrant application and submit it to the prosecutor's office for review. The MSA puts on a mission school to bring in people to cross-train them in the areas of administrative investigations, where there's one set of rules that are out there by labor law, and then there's a separate set of rules that apply to any criminal investigations that go on. To date, we've been involved in over 650 investigations for other entities. And I just want to, I think it's very important to say that the outcomes of these investigations run the gamut. There are some officers that are cleared. There are some officers in which the complaint is not sustained. There are other officers that are found to be administratively responsible for whatever they've been accused of. And there's some officers that have been prosecuted based on the wrongdoing that they've done. So the investigation says some people may think, and I don't mean you, but there's some people that have said, oh, the police will sweep things under the rug. No, we don't. We are administrators and managers of professional organizations that want to do the best we can to service the public and to uphold the oaths that we take. And the mission teams help us perform those duties. A hot topic of the day, duty to intervene training. This is something, oops.
5 minutes.
This is something the Michigan Sheriff's Association is very supportive of. We have reached out through the International Association of Chiefs of Police. We have come through a grant funded by the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, to teach our officers the appropriate way to intercede in an incident that's going wrong. Sheriffs create policies, but we have come to the recognition of having a policy is great, but if we don't give our officers the individual tool sets to deal with these crises when they arise, then we're shortchanging the most valuable asset that any sheriff's office has. It's personnel. We want to help save people, not only the officers, but anyone that might have experienced a transgression by one of them. We want to intercede and prevent that from happening.
And I know we're running towards the end of our time, but we just also wanted to talk about two other things that the sheriffs of Michigan, 100% of the sheriffs of Michigan comply with both the FBI use of force data reporting. 100% of the sheriff's offices are enrolled in this program. And then also the U.S. Department of Justice a couple years ago to apply for grants required that all agencies' use of force policies are DOJ certified. And I wanted to note that 100% of the 83 sheriff's offices' use of force policies are DOJ certified. And lastly, prior to turning it back over, our biggest issue that we see in law enforcement today is the retention and recruitment of good men and women that want to come serve their communities and provide the safety and security to their communities. That's the number one issue. We can all take a part in working on that, and the best thing we can do is when law enforcement do good things, we need to praise law enforcement for the things that they do to keep their communities safe, just as they did 2 Mondays ago here on campus at Michigan State. The law enforcement response to that unfortunate, very sad incident was phenomenal. And I say that as a father, but I say that as a father with 2 kids on campus that evening. So I appreciate that response of law enforcement, and they did an outstanding job. Lastly, we had a video we wanted to share that's one of the Sheriff Michelle LaJoy Young from Kent County, part of her recruiting video, but for the sake of time, we won't share that short video, but we can get you a link to that as well. So,
Thank you. We can send that out by email later on. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation. We do have at least one question. Rep. Breen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I will reserve that question for a follow-up with them, but I want to thank the sheriffs for being here today and say also the good news is that it looks like a lot of your legislative priorities are already being worked on, and I love seeing some of the training that you undergo. I think it would behoove the public to understand the extensive nature of the various programs and trainings you undergo, particularly autism training, de-escalation, and the cultural sensitivity. So, but I will follow up with you with my question later. Thank you.
thank you.
Rep. Bazat will be our last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine is more of just a statement more than a question. Sheriff Rigglesworth, you brought back some fond memories there of what we dealt with in the Sheriff's Department, and you didn't cover them all in an interest of time, but the Sheriff's Departments do such an outstanding job. When I started in '73, which all of you guys are young pups, but it was a Malazzi. I don't know if you guys remember that, but now it's MCOLS. But MCOLS has done such a great job since the early 1970s, not only requiring the academy, but ongoing training. And I think the corrections requirements started in around 2000 or so, I believe.
Yeah, late 90s.
Late 90s. So the standards have in the last 40 to 50 years have just been outstanding, and a lot of credit goes to not only the sheriffs but also the MSA for the outstanding job that you do. And I know I've used the mission team quite a few times, more times than I'd like to say, but the mission team is outstanding. And we do try to maybe get rid of it is is a poor choice of words, but hold people to accountability at the Sheriff's Department. So I appreciate that as well. So you guys do an outstanding job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michigan Sheriff's Association, for your presentation today. Thank you, Sheriff Rigglesworth, for supplying us with excellent retirees who go on to serve as
Yeah.
our Sergeant at Arms. And if anyone's interested in touring the jail, please let me know. I'm happy to arrange that.
I would also say that we can arrange it in any of your home districts, the local jails. It won't be Sheriff Rigglesworth's jail, but we'll. Thank you.
Seeing no further business and with no absent members, we are adjourned.